Hello, everyone. I'm Kelsey Lemon, Senior Technical Marketing Manager for the Cloud Management Business Unit here at VMware, and I want to welcome you to our webinar where we're going to show how Skyline can be a great asset in the day in the life of a VMware admin. So this is all about what happens on day two, and with that, let's just go ahead and get started here. So here's our agenda, what I like to call our flight plan for today. We're going to start off with a quick overview of Skyline for those of you who are unfamiliar with its general capabilities. And then I'm going to discuss how you can use bulk product operations to connect multiple endpoints to the Skyline service after you've done the initial configuration of the collector. Then I'm going to talk about how you can customize the findings and recommendations that Skyline provides you. As you all know, Skyline provides an in-depth analysis of your environment based on what you've made it aware of, but there may be times where you may only want to see issues that matter most to you. Then I'm going to spend some time showing ways to restore your collector's health if they become unhealthy or inactive. And then from there, I'm going to talk about one of Skyline's best features, right? Log Assist. And I'm going to show how it can help you speed support request resolution times. Then I'm also going to show how you can use Skyline as a trusted advisor to help ensure that the environments that you manage are stable and resilient. And then finally, right, I'm going to save the best part for last year. I'm actually going to show how you can use scripting that leverages exported findings and recommendations to automate some common Skyline findings. And so with that, let's do a really quick refresher on the value of Skyline and its role in the overall support experience and its integration with many of the VMware tools that you're already using. As you know, as a customer, I'm sure you're very familiar with the reactive support scenario, right? You experience an issue in your environment, you open an SR with VMware, and our tech support team troubleshoots and works with you to solve that issue. Well, VMware Skyline is actually the next step in that process. It's a proactive support technology, meaning that it can actually help you avoid issues before they happen so that you don't even have the problem in the first place. Um, Skyline also helps resolve existing issues faster. So say, for example, if you have a case open with us, our tech support engineers can use Skyline to view your environment specific configurations, and then they can use data-driven analytics to speed discovery and ultimately drive faster resolution times. And Skyline's automated detection and proactive remediation guidance helps you strengthen your environments. And so with this service, you can actually avoid IT downtime and you can actually reallocate that time to do more valuable work. But here's the best part, Skyline is available at no additional cost with your active production support or premier support contracts, as well as Success 360. And I'm happy to say that Skyline is now available in vRealize Cloud Universal subscriptions. And speaking of environment configurations, right, Skyline recently started to support VMware Cloud Foundation 4.1 and higher. And as we all know, VCF is the industry's leading hybrid cloud platform. And so with this new level of support, right, Skyline will identify VCF management and workload domains and even surface VCF solution-based proactive findings. And then obviously, there's the existing support for vSphere, NSX, vSAN Horizon, and vRealize Operations Manager. There is also a Skyline Management Pack for VROPS. And so if you install it, you're going to see Skyline's proactive findings and recommendations within that VROPS client. And so with that, let's go into some of the key workflows that help you scale usage of Skyline by minimizing adoption barriers, improve your productivity, and reduce your environment's vulnerability to risk, starting with bulk product operations. So if you've been coming to my monthly webinars or watching my workflow videos, you've undoubtedly seen me spend most of my time in Skyline Advisor, right? And that presents proactive findings and recommendations to anyone who's been granted access within VMware Cloud Services via web browser. But as you can see from this high-level diagram here, right, those findings and recommendations that are reported through Skyline from the advisor actually come from the collector that gets configured as part of the installation process, right? And so you can consider the collector the brains of the service because it literally collects key data related to product usage, performance, and configuration from the endpoints that it monitors. But many of the environments that we manage, they're not static. They rarely look like the environments that we configured on day one. Quite the contrary, right? Our environments are dynamic in the sense that we're constantly managing those endpoints that the collector is connected to. And if you're working in a small environment, endpoint management, whether you're adding or updating or even deleting them, while somewhat tedious, can be a bearable fact of life, right? Um, but if endpoint management is a barrier that is preventing you from expanding your environment coverage, right? Or if you're looking for ways to be more productive, especially if you're working in a large environment of products, I'm going to show you a neat tool that you may not be aware of, bulk product operations.
So let's check out the demo. I'm going to log into my collector, and I should note that in order to leverage the bulk product operations feature, you have to be using collector 2.7 or higher. So make sure you're on the latest version by either enabling the auto upgrade feature in the collector, or you can do it manually by clicking the upgrade option on the banner notification within the Skyline Collector web interface. Okay, so with that being done, now for some context. I'm going to show what it's like to manually add endpoints from the products that Skyline supports. And as I go through the configurations for vCenter, NSX and T, Horizon, vRealize Operations, and VMware Cloud Foundation, you'll see that I have to manually add the fully qualified domain name or IP address, the username, and the password for each of them. Now, this in and of itself may not be that much of a time sink if I had to do this for a few products, but imagine the productivity loss if I had to do this at scale across an environment of perhaps 9 vCenters, 1 instance of VCF, 2 instances of vRealize operations, and 14 instances of NSX and T. This is where bulk operations come in. The first time you encounter it, you're going to get a message indicating that you agree to participate in our Customer Experience Improvement Program that enables VMware to improve the quality of its products based on the data that Skyline collects to produce its proactive findings and recommendations. And after acknowledging participation in the program by hitting the Continue button, you're given the option to download a blank template or click Problematic Products. Well, since this is the first time I'm using bulk product operations, I'm going to download the blank template and update it to create multiple product endpoints by supplying the product type, the host name, username, and passwords. And if you're using self-signed certificates, there's even an option to add thumbprint information for the products that you're adding, editing, or deleting. This field is not required, and the information will be retrieved by the collector if you don't enter it. Okay, so with the CSV file created, I'll drag and drop it into the collector interface so that it can be verified prior to executing the bulk operation feature. Once complete, you'll receive a notification indicating that the operation was successful. And if there were any issues encountered, you'll be given the option to download the problematic template that's already populated with the products that experienced issues in the operations so that you can make the necessary adjustments, such as verifying that the supplied passwords and host names are correct. Okay, so with the products added, I can now see them all on the System Status tab in my collector. Now I'm going to shift gears for a moment and I'm going to show an example where using the bulk update feature could come in really handy. Say, for example, you're in Skyline and you're using Log Assist to send a log bundle to our support team. And you notice, after a validation analysis, that Skyline is reporting that you have connectivity issues with some of the endpoints that Skyline is monitoring. Of course, you can go back to the collector and manually update each product, or you can perform a bulk update with the appropriate CSV file. And once that update is done, you can go back to Skyline, perform a revalidation, and see that you have access to complete the log bundle transfer. And finally, because I'm a completionist, I'm going to show how you can delete multiple endpoints at once. The use cases vary as to why you would want to do this, but the option is available. The process is exactly the same as adding endpoints. Just change the operation type to delete in the CSV file and drag and drop it into the collector interface. And after the operation has been successfully completed, the endpoints will no longer appear. And if you're wondering, the answer is yes. Bulk product operations can be disabled by going to the Settings option on the Collector Configuration tab and toggling the feature off.
Now let's talk about how you can customize the findings that Skyline provides by leveraging its hide feature. So you may be asking yourself, for all the talk around Skyline's ability to allow me to see problems before they occur, why would the solution give me the ability to hide them? And the answer is quite simple. It's all about giving you greater control over how you wish to leverage a solution. And that control basically comes in two levels, and perhaps the most common form of hiding is done with what I like to call task-specific findings. And the reasons could vary as to why you may want to do this, but our customers have indicated that they like to hide specific findings in order to perhaps delay remediation until they have more information. They may want to hide recommendations that they simply can't remediate because of specific dependencies around compliance standards that have been established. Or perhaps they want to simply remove findings that simply don't have any impact on the environment that they're managing. And I'm going to show an example of this. Um, then there's the ability to hide objects on an object level, such as an ESXi host. And depending on the resolution of your monitor, this method may not be so obvious. I'm going to show how you can do that, but hosts, and the findings from those hosts can be hidden for a variety of reasons, right? Maybe that host is part of a test dev environment and the extra findings simply just increase the number of findings that aren't particularly relevant for immediate resolution. And very similarly, perhaps that host is being decommissioned or at end of life, and you simply just want to reduce the clutter in your findings and recommendations to focus on the hosts that matter most to you. And so with that being said, obviously the benefits are pretty straightforward. It actually streamlines your dashboard by reducing the number of findings to the ones that are important to you. And most importantly, it actually gives you a way to prioritize the ones that you want to remediate. And with that, let's go ahead and check out the demo. So let me demonstrate how to do that with the current finding that I have filtered. I'm going to click on the Select All button, then click Hide Findings, and then finally click OK. Now, the finding itself hasn't been deleted. I can still see it under my Hidden Findings option, and I can always unhide it in the future if it becomes a priority for me to resolve. And now for the really interesting part. Let's say, for example, you have a host that you're either using for testing purposes or it's in the process of being decommissioned. You can actually exclude findings from these objects by finding that particular object and turning off its visibility, thereby removing unwanted noise from the findings that aren't relevant to you. I should also point out that after I've customized my list of findings that are particularly relevant to me, I can export them for additional review or send to other members of my team who may be the ones actually responsible for implementing the recommendations from Skyline Advisor. And this really cool feature is available for all Skyline customers. The export is a CSV file that can actually be leveraged by other tools, such as CLI tools, to automate the remediation of these findings. All right, so now for our next topic, restoring environment health. And for this segment, again, I'm going to focus on our unsung hero of the Skyline service, that Skyline Collector. I'm going to discuss its role in the overall service and the importance of maintaining its health. And then we're going to explore ways to restore its health should it ever become compromised. And again, here's that diagram that we're all very familiar with. Again, the collector is actually the tool that delivers those proactive findings and recommendations from the endpoints that it monitors to the Skyline Advisor service. So obviously, the collector is a key component of the service, so it's important that it stays in a healthy state because anything less than that would not only impact Skyline's ability to deliver findings or recommendations that would keep the environments that you manage out of harm's way, but it also impacts your ability to upload log bundles to VMware using our log assist feature, which actually, as you know, would be a very bad thing should you actually encounter an issue that you need to react to. And so here are the 5 states of the collector that you can have, ranging from healthy to partially healthy to failing to collect data to having no products configured or even inactive. And at the end of this segment here, I'm going to provide a link to a troubleshooting guide that goes into detail on the key characteristics as well as recommendations on how to restore those collectors to a healthy state if it ever comes to one of these statuses highlighted here.
Now for the demo. Let's jump into the service and check the state of my collectors. And as you can see, I have 3 collectors that are monitoring my environments that consist of 2 vCenters, 9 hosts, 24 virtual machines, 1 vRealize Operation Manager, and 2 Horizon Connection servers. And when I click on their health, I can see that they're either partially healthy or failing to collect data. Not good. So let's address the collector that is failing to collect data from my vCenter. I'm going to remote desktop in and do some investigating, and as I expand my inventory, I see the culprit, or rather, it's what I don't see. It seems that my collector was inadvertently removed, and I can only speculate as to why, but perhaps it was moved to another vCenter, or perhaps it was cloned and the original one was deleted. But in any event, I can solve this issue by locating the parent data store and folder and using its VMX file to properly add it back to inventory. Doing this is a simple process. I'll just walk through the registration wizard, giving the VM a name, associating it with the host, and confirming my decisions. Now that I'm done, I'll power it back on. This should enable the collector to properly communicate with the vCenter. Now on to the collector that is registering as partially healthy. I'm going to remote desktop in as well into the second vCenter, and after a quick inspection, I notice that the collector, while available, doesn't seem to be responding. So I'm going to reboot the guest OS since it has VMware tools installed, and after the reboot, I notice that its state has changed from available to powered on. Now for the third collector, I went through a very similar process and addressed this status as well. Now, let's go back into Skyline Advisor, and as you can see, everything is functioning properly again, with all 3 collector statuses registering as healthy.
Now, before I conclude this segment, I just want to point out that should your collectors ever go into an unhealthy state, the actions that you take to restore them may be different from the ones that I took. Remediation is all dependent on how you have your environments configured. So be sure to check out this KB article for more insight into how to troubleshoot your issue. And if you're unable to return your collector to a healthy state after following the resolutions provided, please contact the VMware community for help. And if you are a Premier Support customer, you can also contact your support account manager for additional assistance. Now let's talk about how you can use Skyline to improve time to resolution to your open support requests. Chances are, if you're already using Skyline, you're very well aware of its log assist feature, but I'd like to take a moment to talk about why it's such a game changer. As part of the configuration process, right? Skyline is automatically set up to create log bundles. Yes, you heard me correctly. The process is actually automated. And if any of you in the audience have gone through this process of manually creating log bundles, you know how time consuming it can be. Um, Skyline also allows you to send log bundles safely and securely to our support team, so you don't have to use any hosting services like an FTP site to transfer those log bundles, which could be many gigabytes worth of data. And as you can imagine, both of these capabilities equate to getting those log bundles faster to our support team. As a matter of fact, customers are reporting that log assist is actually 17 times faster than the manual process of creating and sending log bundles to our support team. And with that, let's just go ahead and check out the demo here. Up until this point, I've been talking about Skyline's proactive and self-service capabilities to keep the environments that you manage out of harm's way. But there may be times when you will need to react to an issue that is disrupting the environments that you manage, and our support team is here to help. And Skyline can also facilitate your interaction with our support team and even speed up total time to resolution. And this is where the log assist feature comes into play. After you've submitted a support request, Skyline Log Assist streamlines the process of manually gathering and uploading those log bundles that our TSEs will need to help troubleshoot your issue. Since the SR has already been opened, I can select it and I can attach a log bundle by initiating a log transfer. And at that point, I'm done. In less than 2 minutes, I've created a log bundle and I've sent it to support. You may have heard us mention on several occasions that customers are reporting a 30 to 40% time savings when creating log bundles, and this is how they're doing it. And with this being done, I can actually go back to more meaningful work now. And if I want to save myself even more time, I can even let VMware's TSEs create the log bundle for me with its log transfer request feature. I have the option to approve or deny the request, and there's even an option to auto-approve requests from our TSE team. And to keep tabs on the status of your SRs as well as the associated log bundle transfers, you can see that here in the log library. Here you can see who initiated the transfer, whether it was by you or by VMware, and you can also see when it was done. Now let's talk about how you can use Skyline's upgrade recommendations to strengthen the environments that you manage to make your environment more stable and resilient, and most importantly, to keep your environment out of harm's way. So, upgrade recommendations can be a very, very tricky topic, right? Reactions can vary from love to hate to anything in between, right? You know, Personally, when I'm hard at work on my computer and I get a pop-up on my screen that's telling me that an update is available, more times than not, I'm going to click cancel instead of install because I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to get to it later because right now, quite frankly, I just don't have the time. Or better yet, I may avoid doing an upgrade because I'm afraid I actually may break something that's already working. And as we all know, any environment can be very fragile. So I'm reluctant that I may um, disrupt the balance without any insight into how any upgrade could impact the other installations. And now that's just me on a single computer. Obviously it's far more complicated when you're running a network, in an era where constant driver updates and bug fixes and patches are created to address security vulnerabilities and performance issues. It can be very overwhelming. It could definitely be a challenge for any IT professional to track them all. And because of this, patching is a major challenge for IT managers everywhere. Recently I read somewhere in a recent survey that 31% of companies are running Windows or are actually on the latest OS, and 60% of them are running Windows versions that no longer receive regular support. And so obviously, the reasons for not upgrading and patching can go on and on. But not doing them could actually expose vulnerabilities to your environment and impact business continuity. And so with that being said, we at VMware, we realize this, and that's why we've included upgrade recommendations in Skyline. And so why should you use this feature, right? Well, upgrade recommendations are important because they often include critical patches to security holes. Being aware of them makes your environment less vulnerable to harm. Upgrade recommendations can also include new or enhanced features or have better compatibility with other VMware solutions. They can also improve the stability of your software and remove outdated features. And most importantly, you could potentially remediate dozens of Skyline's proactive findings at once. And for me, this benefit alone is worth the price of admission. And so with that, let's just go ahead and check out the demo here. Upgrade recommendations are available under Findings and Recommendations. And clicking on an upgrade recommendation actually displays all of the recommendations for your environment. And they're sorted by vCenter Server. And if there are multiple upgrade recommendations, they are displayed in order of upgrade sequence. So in this example, the 3 EXXI hosts managed by this particular vCenter server has 3 upgrade recommendations, including the minimum build number of each version. So in this case, if I upgraded to minimum build number 6.7U3, I would resolve 26 potential issues discovered by Skyline within my environment. But if I do decide to upgrade to a higher version than what is recommended, then the automatic product interoperability check will be invalidated. And speaking of interop, you may be asking yourself if performing the recommended upgrades will break connections to other VMware solutions. And I'm happy to say that Skyline automatically checks product interoperability for the upgrade recommendations. Clicking on Show Details next to the upgrade recommendation will actually display additional information, which includes product interoperability results. The product interoperability check will also alert you if another product is not interoperable with that upgrade recommendation. This way, you are made aware if another product needs to be upgraded first before performing the recommended upgrade. And now we're on to our last topic here, which is around leveraging automation. By now, you know how Skyline can diagnose your environments and come back with specific findings to, again, make your environment more secure, more stable, and more resilient. You may have even heard me say in past webinars that quite a number of Skyline's recommendations can even be automated with scripts and CLI tools. Well, today I'm going to show you how it's done with a straightforward workflow that connects all the dots on how Skyline and a bit of simple scripting can help you remove long-standing items on your to-do list and improve your productivity at the same time. Odds are, right? If you're an IT admin, you're already familiar with the concept of scripting and CLI tools, and some of you may even be power users. But if you're not a power user, you may have some reservations, and here are a few that I've heard, as well as some of my responses to them. One of the first things that often come up is, well, I'm not an expert programmer. And quite frankly, that's okay. You don't have to be. If you understand the basic concepts of programming, you'll be surprised at what you can accomplish with a simple script that's comprised of only a few lines. Another reservation is quite obvious. I may break something for you, right? And of course, this is a very legitimate concern. Checks and balances should definitely be in place before implementing scripts. Practice in a controlled situation like a small test dev environment before you're comfortable enough to execute scripts in production. And lastly, right, I often hear, why should I use scripting and CLI tools when I can do it all in a GUI? Well, GUIs definitely make your life easy, but if your GUI requires that you go through multiple steps to complete a simple single task, imagine the productivity sink that you're going to experience if you have to do it at scale, right? At scale across your entire environment. Well, scripts can actually automate that process and give you that very valuable time back. And that last bit, right, that leads me to talk about why you should actually consider integrating scripts. Um, like I mentioned, right, scripting actually can help you manage IT environments at scale. Often Skyline will provide a recommendation that can address potential issues that could impact as many as 30 objects at once. And trying to address them individually, just quite simply, is just not a very productive use of time. And here's a very interesting statistic, right? 60% of availability and performance errors are actually caused by misconfigurations, right? And so scripting could actually reduce that number quite significantly. And finally, on a more personal note, having the ability to script just simply makes you more valuable to your team. It'll actually make you more of the hero than you already are.
So let's jump into Skyline and see this workflow in action. As you can see, Skyline has given me 107 recommendations with different levels of severity. Earlier, you heard me say that 60% of availability and performance errors are often caused by misconfigurations. And interestingly enough, one of Skyline's most reported environment findings relate to how NTP is configured. So let me do a search, and lo and behold, I see that my environment is reporting this issue as well. It's a critical issue indicating that NTP is not configured across my EXXI hosts and that the times must be synchronized as well. And if this issue is not addressed, the stability of my environment can be compromised. Skyline is even telling me the names of the EXXI hosts that are impacted and the vCenters where they are located. And luckily, there's a fix for this. There's a KB article that describes exactly what I need to do to self-remediate without opening an SR at VMware. And you may have seen me show this feature before, but I'm going to export these findings into a CSV file as it's going to play a major role a little bit later in the demonstration here. But what I want you to do is to simply make note of the vCenter names, the 6 EXXI hosts, and the KB number that automatically gets included with this report. So I'm working from home today, so I'm going to remotely log into my vSphere client. I can see the vCenter and the 6 EXXI hosts where Skyline has detected the potential issue. And as you can see, NTP isn't configured and the time is set to manual for all of them. I've copied over the CSV file that I've exported from Skyline so that it resides locally. This particular machine only has Notepad installed, which is why the file looks different, but the data is exactly the same. So now the fun part. Here's a script that I'm going to use, and I can't take credit for it. It was written by one of our many heroes here at VMware, Sunny Gwynn. And as you can see, it's just a few lines of code. Basically, the script has set variables for the vCenter name, the EXXI host, and the KB article that it will pull from that CSV file that I exported earlier. It will then assign an IP address to the NTP servers, start the service, and set the time. And since the CSV file has 6 objects, it's going to do this 6 times. So now I'm just simply going to run the script. I can minimize this and focus on higher priorities if I want it, but I'm going to keep it open so that you can see what's happening in the background. Now that the script has been completed, I can see that my issue has been resolved. I'm going to click on a couple of the hosts here so that you can see that the service is indeed configured and installed and running, and the time has been set appropriately. And now to confirm, I'm going to go back over to Skyline, and I can see that my issues have dropped. I've gone from 107 to 106 issues. And now I'm just going to do a search for NTP, and I can see that it's been removed as a potential issue from the service as well.
And with that, I am going to conclude today's webinar. And if you're not already using Skyline, I encourage you all to adopt it on the spot and start using it today. All you have to do is just go to the Get Started link here on this page and install Skyline. And we even have a way to test drive the service. Simply go to the Hands-on Lab link and you can try it out in our sandbox environment. And you can also visit the other URLs listed here for additional information, including FAQs. And if you still have questions, Skyline has a moderated community, and we encourage you all to check that out. And with that, enjoy the rest of your day, everybody.